on a couple rewatches since I rediscovered it, I'm like, he's an asshole half of the time. He's an
asshole, yeah.
And I'm like, and she is neurotic, which I'm like, relatable. Me too. Although that like last monologue that he delivers to her is so beautiful, where he's like, I want you to be the first thing I see when I wake up and all this stuff. Beautiful.
So he can be a dick the entire time.
Yes,
he says one nice thing and you're like, oh, we're in love
she's
now.
Like, Harry, yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Femme Tell All podcast. My name is Madison Bellissimo.
And I'm Ruth Devereaux.
And we're so happy you're here.
We're always happy you're here. And
we need to find like another like call and response.
I know. It's just not going to happen. If you know us, you know us.
I love it. I love that we're just so happy you're here, point blank.
Because we are.
Period.
Very.
That, exactly. So today we're covering idealized couples and relationships. Yeah, absolutely. I said relationships. It's true. I think a lot of the time, as a woman, I will say that love a good rom-com. And
Who doesn't?
Well, some people don't, I guess.
Oh.
Wrong people. People that have no taste.
Not our crowd.
Yeah. But I get so swept up in some rom-coms, and I just get so emotional sometimes. And you get attached to these characters.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can infiltrate when you're dating and you're going like, well, it's not like this. It's not this like swelling love. Yeah, you know?
Yeah.
And, or like it's not so hard. Like I feel like a lot of the time media portrays it so difficult. And I think we should go over
some of like the top relationships we've witnessed. Not all of them, of course, but like we'll pick a couple and then kind of break it down and see like, would this be a good relationship?
Yeah.
Would we want them to be in therapy?
Yeah.
Would we tell our friend to exit that relationship?
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
100%.
Save yourself.
Yeah. No, truly.
Yeah.
So who are some that are really notable for you that you feel like?
I mean, Sex and the City girly right here.
Let's talk about it.
Carrie and Big.
Yeah.
Right off the top.
Horrible.
Bad relationship.
Horrible.
Yes.
And I know we're not like breaking the internet by saying that.
No, we're not. But like, let's break it down a little bit more. Like, obviously, when she first met Big, he was very reluctant to commitment. Red flag right off the bat.
Bye.
Yeah. And then even when he was afraid of commitment, committed to somebody else right after being with her.
Tale as old as time. I feel like there's a whole genre of women on the internet that I feel like are like, I'm the one before the like love, and you're like, ooh, that's hard.
But also don't identify yourself as
No. But I think they've had it enough times where like they were with a man for God knows how long and he wasn't committing, and then the next person that he meets.
But that's why it's so important that as women or as anybody in a relationship, if somebody isn't willing to give you what you're asking for, they don't care enough.
Yeah.
Like if somebody is consistently saying, oh, well, maybe, I don't know if I'm not like that's clear definition enough to be like, this is not the person.
Yeah. I mean, I would go as far as saying like, if someone's questioning a lot, I start being like,
no.
Shouldn't do that.
Well, then it also comes to what is your self-worth? For somebody like Carrie that's consistently chasing this ungettable man.
Yes.
That even when he gets married, she's still chasing him.
Yeah.
That's not, that shows a lot of her qualities of how she valued herself. Like what she was looking for in a relationship, what she was saying versus what she was fighting for.
100%. And they had an affair.
Yeah.
We're okay with that?
No. Well, even like if you watch like the newer seasons too, she's like, maybe I wasn't meant to be with him. Like after like committing her life to this man, being married, and he passes away, her realization is like, maybe that wasn't the right person for me. Yeah.
I mean, even if we fast forward, these are spoilers because this has been out for fucking ever.
It's not a spoiler. If it is, shame on you.
Yeah, you should have watched it 5 times by now. But even that like iconic scene from the movie where he doesn't show up to the wedding, and then he realizes he's fucked up, and then he goes to go back, and it's already too late. He already told her that he was too scared. That is one of the most painful pieces of media for me to watch every time. And Charlotte, it's just like, she has such a brilliant reaction in that. And I think, and that stems from what I would consider one of the more healthy relationships.
Absolutely.
on
Harry and Charlotte.
Well, I wasn't even talking about that. I'm a huge Steve fan. I know, guys. I'm sorry. I have to out myself. Miranda. I love him so much.
You think that's the healthy relationship?
No. I'm saying like at first it was, but I think I don't think that she was a wonderful partner to him. And I think that obviously he ends up cheating and then he's not a great partner to her. Sure. But that stems, like that doubt is because she goes, I don't know why you guys are getting married. You're crazy for getting married. She says that to him like the night before they're supposed to get married. And then it freaks him out.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
but who wants a man that's freaked out that easily?
100%. Yeah, no, my man better be like, I'm doing this for life.
Exactly.
Tattoo my body.
Our relationship is not the same as others. Like, you want somebody that's so confident in what you two personally hold together that nobody else could ever possibly understand until you're in a relationship. Yeah. Or, like, if you're in that relationship, you don't know the inner workings of it.
100%.
But if somebody can shake you by one sentence, like, I wouldn't marry that person.
Facts. No, it's true. You want someone that's stable. And I think the whole thing, we've talked about this until we were blue in the face, is consistency and safety were our two things when we had talked about reference what like a mom. Wow. What a Freudian slip. What a woman wants from a man.
Yeah.
And I think that's an example of it, right? Yeah. That's like something palpable that like if they are able to not be shaken by some doubt or anything like that, it's showing a sense of safety in the relationship, and it's showing that they can be consistent. They want to be consistent, and that's what they're doing. So, but yeah, I feel like Big and Carrie are not
bad.
It.
No,
yeah.
So if you're Carrie's friend, what are you saying?
I'm telling her to get the fuck out of there.
At what point are you saying
I would be like, get the fuck up.
You're like, every step of the relationship, like, get out.
I think as soon as... Well, there's like a lot of nuance there. Like the one time when he's supposed to meet the friends, and he doesn't the first time, right? That one it's like one of the most disappointing big moments, I feel like. Because it's like he's going like, I know I've been non-committal. I want to meet your friends. I want to meet them. Let's do it. And then he doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that I think it's like we understand it's a scary thing, or like say for someone that might have been scared to commit, it's like you can have grace for to a certain degree of like, I know that this is intimidating, but this would mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
And she expressed that to him. He agrees, and then he can't follow through. Yeah. And that's one of the first signs that I would have been like, if I was her friend and I knew all of that context, I'd be like, you might need to go back to the drawing board because he obviously isn't able to step up
to the plate. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's my initial. Yeah. What about you?
I'd probably go a little bit further because I probably would have been like, okay, like you guys are just starting off, like da. I think it would have been when they were dating for a while, the relationship was going well, and he refused to tell his mom that was his girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The church thing, right? He's going to...
And then he's also keeping her at arm's length where he's like, oh, I don't even want you to meet my mom.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is like, you guys are... It's not like anything's wrong in the relationship per se.
Yeah.
And if he's not seeing you in that light, that he doesn't feel confident to be like, scream from the rooftops, like, this is my person.
Yeah.
Like, bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I think that kind of level of confidence of being like, this is my person.
Yeah.
Especially when she was doing it at the time too.
Yeah.
That can feel incredibly inequitable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would also advise Carrie to get the fuck up.
But it's so funny, when I was first watching the series, I was like obsessed with this relationship. And I'm like, oh my God, they have to end up together.
And you're just trying to get them together.
You wanted to see them come together. Yeah. And now, like as an adult, like watching it back, and I'm like, No.
And also, like, let's talk about, there was it to the point of like when she was with Aiden, a very healthy relationship.
Love Aiden.
I know.
Over Steve.
Yeah. Okay, listen. We're not here for the Steve slander. I love a quirky New Yorker. God. I love him so much. But Aiden, I feel like there was even like a whole, like when she cheated on Aiden and she was non-committal to Aiden. Like, I think people weren't as upset about that.
Yeah,
they were kind of low key like,
yeah,
well, she belongs with Big, and it's like, does she though?
No.
So I think our stamp of femtell-all is fuck Big and Carrie. They are not. They were not.
They were never meant to be together.
They were never meant to be together, and like
that was like somebody forcing a relationship.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like erotic. Like I think it was very hot and heavy.
Yeah.
I think it was high key toxic. Yeah. I think that they obviously had a bond.
Yeah,
and I think that that's possible too. Like I think both of us can say that we've probably dated someone in the past that we were like, whoa, this is so like windswept, you know, you're like, wow, this is like exciting and enticing. And then you're like, you get away from it and you're like,
what was I thinking?
Yeah. You're like, that couldn't have been less right for me.
Absolutely.
You know, my body was telling me, you know, like, I'm like, oh my God, you're like my body, my friends, my family, my sleep schedule, my anxiety was through the roof.
Yeah.
I lost a bunch of weight. You're like, wow, you know, it's wild. So I think that happens more than people would like to admit.
It's so true.
Do you have another couple that you would like to discuss?
Let's go Titanic.
Titanic. Oh, what a fucking iconic one.
I mean,
well, they're such a short romance.
It's so short.
It's so short-lived. And again, we're not breaking the internet when we say this. Like, girl could have made room for him.
There could have been room.
I'm like, it's so frustrating.
And it's Leo. He's tiny. Put him on.
Every time I love using that as like a meme of like when she's blowing the whistle and she's like I think it's so funny to reference in very inappropriate times. But I think that she obviously was with her man.
But she also did not love him.
She did not love him.
She did not love him. She was in a forced relationship there too. Anything you have to force is bad. Don't do it.
And that was for money.
Yeah.
That was for like status, class. Like you have to marry within.
Yeah.
And that was a class system too. So that's where.
Well, here's the question then. In real world, could somebody, and let's make sure it's the same, like, because I think, unfortunately, I think if you think of man high stature and a woman, like maybe that's considered a lower stature, people feel more comfortable with that.
They're totally fine. It's giving Pretty Woman.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Like we've seen the trope.
That's another one we can talk about. But if you have a woman that is at high stature, high family, whatever, and then you have somebody that is multiple classes below, does that work in the real world?
I think it does.
Yeah?
I do think it does. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of cultural differences. Like, I know that cultural sounds like probably a weird word choice, but I think like just the vibes that you were probably raised in and I think the references, the same kind of taste sometimes. Sure, like I think that and not for the better. You know, I think it can be really polarizing.
Yeah.
And so I think as long as both parties are super like willing to compromise and learn the other side of the track, so to speak, you know, and be down to find what works for both of them, I think it is doable. What do you think? You don't think so?
I don't think so. No. I don't at all. I mean, like if we think about that movie and what they actually knew about each other, they knew that they were attracted to each other. They were attracted to each other. They wanted to have sex. That he was interesting to her because it was so outside of her structure. If you take that into like actual life together, that it doesn't correlate in a relationship. Yeah. Like imagine she still has her family. She still has friends of that status. Yeah. And for him as well, like combining those two worlds is extremely difficult. Yeah. I think that people need to align also on intelligence. And like, I think not to like.
Is huge. But that, I don't think that you're right. I think there are sometimes we've seen in media and otherwise where people just don't have the same opportunities if they're not in a certain like neighborhood or tax bracket, you know?
Absolutely.
It's incredibly disheartening, but that I also don't think is a hard fast rule even slightly.
No, I don't think it is either. But like if you think about them specifically, she grew up in a very high end, whereas he grew up on the streets. I'm not saying he was like, the intelligence isn't non-existent, but it's going to be a different type, right?
Yeah.
And so like kind of correlating that, like how do you raise kids? Like how does he feel comfortable in the situation? Like there's so many things that as a couple coming together that doesn't really work in the real world if there's not some commonality.
100%.
And I'm not saying if it was like that was an extreme.
Yeah.
If you're like, and I don't even know how you would like actually specify the steps of somebody's class system, but like if you're like maybe 1 or 2, like I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're that extreme differences, like it doesn't work in the real world.
Well, do we have it like current day? Like I feel like I'm not saying that we don't, but I'm saying that I'm saying not in the way that in Titanic, where it was like,
but we do. Like if like say I wouldn't probably be able to date somebody that was like of like Middle Eastern royalty. Like I wouldn't even know how to like make my life. Like I wouldn't. How do I even become part of that world?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I'm like, wow, we're like going into I'm like, this is a whole other TED Talk that we can get into. But I think you're right. I think we see this trope so often too, specifically in media. Like I think about The Notebook.
Yeah.
And I think about So Good. And it's the same thing. Her mom is like, why would you marry like a working class man? Like marry the man that went to war and now has a great job and blah, blah,
blah. But here, that's the difference between that relationship and somebody like the Titanic relationship is like they weren't that far off. They're living in the same city. They know the same people. They like have similar interests. They're hanging out. They're talking. They connect on many different levels. Like that's a very different kind of connection, even though they're separated by some classes.
Yeah. I just watched a film. I don't even know if it's worth it bringing up because I don't think people have watched it. It was called like It Had to Be You. Have you seen that? It's a rom-com. It's a newer one with Nat Wolff and Lucy Hale. And I'm bringing this up because it gives a similar timeline where it's only like a couple of days or whatever. Yeah. And sometimes that's another trope in rom-coms where it's like you're thrust into this situation and oh wow, you fell in love, you know. And they have that right in this rom-com. You know what you're getting into, and you know they meet at a wedding. It's quick. They're out of town. Blah blah blah. Yeah. But you know, by the end of it, when they're like, I love you. You know, this was one of the first times that I was watching and I was like, no, you don't. No, bitch. Like, no, you don't. Like, well, I was just like, listen, I know that you can, you know, and I think a little with the Titanic, I think you can get swept up. And I think there's been totally times in my real life where you meet someone and you're like, whoa, I feel all consumed so by. Much, yeah.
Well, they also say, like, even for shows like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, when you're put into a bubble essentially where it's like you're supposed to be searching for love. Everybody around you is competing for that same person. Yeah. Like your mind tells you this is what you want, that you love this person.
Yeah. It's like
even like Love is Blind, like you're put into these rooms and you know the whole goal is to fall in love. And so like does it mean that they don't fall in love or they don't feel that? Not necessarily, but like when they get out of that situation, it changes the whole scope.
Yeah, the dynamic's different. Like that's why it's not foolproof, but I do appreciate that in Love is Blind. They have that like, well, now you guys live together. Yeah. Like, how does that? Because it's like, I think about compatibility, right? If we're again going out of the scope of like, okay, so say we look at Leo and Kate Winslet in Titanic, and we're going, what is their even compatibility? They have sex drive and they're young and they're just devoted to each other.
If you even think of the conversations they had in the movie, where was that where they were like, oh, wow, me too. Oh,
bonding.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly,
there wasn't. Right? It was like, oh, well, like I'm escaping this life and I want to be anywhere but here. And now here's my opportunity of somebody living a completely different life. Like, I just want a piece of that.
Yeah. So that's such a valid point. But I think we don't, sometimes people experience that in reality and common, like current day.
Sure.
But I think when I think about commonalities and things that are like, it's like really character based. It's like how I tick, right? You know, it's like if I feel like really compatible with someone, I'm going like, we have the same like moral, like, like we feel morally driven by the same things where we get enlightened by similar things. Like we might not have the same exact hobbies, but like the way we're ignited is similar, or like the way music moves us and things like that. It's like when you start going to the nitty gritty, and then on top of that, you have to be compatible in your like everyday life. Like take you and Neil for example. Like you guys love working out, and that's something that you guys have been doing quite recently every day. Yeah. And it's like not every couple
would want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or one would maybe do it for the
other person, but not like what they're doing. Yeah.
Or they would burn out. But like you both genuinely like doing that. And that's an incredible big compatibility that like seems so, it's not like
seem nominal, but like when you're actually living your life with somebody, it's super important. Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Huge. It's like how someone keeps their home. Like how someone
that's massive.
It's huge. How someone treats their friends, how much they see their friends.
How they handle money. That's so big. I think it's not a lot of people talk about it enough. Like you need to know how your partner values money, how they spend it, how they save it, like everything. Because if you guys are at opposite spectrums, like that's another thing about Carrie and Big. Like she was a big spender.
Frivolous.
He's a finance guy. Like totally different ends 100%. Of that spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. She made money, but she spent it.
She made money towards the end. Before it was like she wasn't making that much money and she was spending a lot. Yeah.
Come on, she lived in Manhattan. Like if we're really
but that's also not realistic.
She was fucking buying Manola. Like, I'm like anyway, but I think it's interesting because we see these same tropes and archetypes in relationships that we all pine over. Yeah. Like talk about friends to lovers, right? I think about like what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of friends to lovers?
Like relationship that I've seen?
Yeah, like in media.
In media? This is such a stupid example, but I think of New Girl with...
that's great. That's a really good one.
Yeah?
I mean, Jess and... Nick. Yeah. That's a really beautiful one. And that's the one where people are rooting for it the entire time, right? Yeah. And same thing I thought about like When Harry Met Sally.
Oh,
that is the quintessential...
Totally.
We're going to be friends and we keep coming back and the universe keeps putting us back together, but we're not good for each other. And then we are good for each other.
I kind of hate that too. I think that we see that so much in media and I think that's why people think you can't be friends with the opposite sex or somebody that you've dated, which I obviously disagree with. But you always see like, like if a man and a woman are close, they're going to end up together and it's not true.
Yeah, and I think it gives an unrealistic expectation to some people when they're like getting into a friendship. They almost are expecting that like there is a possibility. Yes, and it's like, homeboy, please, I just want to kick it. It's interesting because I had really not gravitated towards that movie before my early 20s. Like I kind of was like, okay, then I finally watched it, and I was like, oh my God, I loved it. I loved it. But then on a couple rewatches now since I first rediscovered it, because I had seen it when I was a kid, but I wasn't like watching it, and then I'm like, he's an asshole half of the time. He's an asshole,
yeah.
And I'm like, and she is neurotic, which I'm like, relatable. Me too. And I'm like, although that like last monologue that he delivers to her is so beautiful, where he's like, I want to be I want you to be the first thing I like see when I wake up and all this stuff. Beautiful.
But so he can be a dick the entire time. Yes, he says one nice thing and you're like, oh, we're in love
she's
now.
Like, Harry. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not the vibe, and I don't think that they were always compatible. Like I think that obviously life thrust them together, and I don't think they were a toxic relationship by any means, but
they were a great friendship.
Yeah.
And I think that
and sometimes that can develop. Yeah. It can.
Sure.
It's not like it never can.
No,
but
for sure.
I would say don't think that because you guys are friends.
That is not the standard. That is an exception to the rule.
I just yelled in the microphone. I'm sorry. But it's true. It really fucks me up a bit because I'm like, why is that one of our most quintessential rom-coms? Yeah. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, I live, breathe, and die for Bridget Jones' Diary.
Oh, that's a good one.
Such a good one. And that's a realistic relationship in my, like, obviously it's heightened, it's hyperbolic. It's a funny, it's a comedy.
Yeah.
But how they interact and how they are opposites and they are completely like what you put them on paper, you're not saying that they're compatible.
They're the perfect match, yeah.
And they go through different times where like, when she finds out, or she thinks she's pregnant in like the first or second movie, and she's like, she thinks they're pregnant and they're talking, and then he's like, well, he would have to go to this school because all of my family went to this school, and she's like, fuck no, and it's like I've had that literal conversation with where I'm like, what are you talking about? Our future children that are not even born yet, you're like, what about if they want to be a dancer? What about if they want to be... And then having those strong opinions. But one thing that's really beautiful is that I feel like they always come back to each other, and they always... The through line for me and why I love that movie as a woman watching it, it is a woman... It's made for women.
Made for us.
is his devotion to her and how loyal he is and how he
through it all.
And a part of that love is sacrificial too. Like I feel like a lot of the times when he's loving her actively, it's not to have her. You know, it's like to make sure she has the best life possible. And that's the thing that gets me going, okay? That's the thing that I was like, oh, I am unwell after. I will watch Bridget Jones' Diary anytime because of that. And I will say that they have a healthy relationship. Ooh, stamp.
Okay.
That's my...
So I think for me, the one of the most realistic relationships I've seen in a movie that was still unhealthy, but like to me was realistic is The Way We Were. Yeah.
That's such a good one.
Because they're very opposite as well, and they have those butting head moments, but they love each other.
Yeah.
But it still leads to them not being together. That's definitely not a spoiler. That's from the 80s. If anybody yells at me for that.
She's like, don't watch it. No, you're right. And like sometimes the rom-coms are better. Like obviously I am a sucker for a good ending.
Totally. I want to witness love just like anybody else wants to witness love. And I think that's why we're so drawn into these and why...
And watch love overcome.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Like, I think sometimes we need to see them not end up together because I think we need to have a realistic expectation because sometimes you are with someone and you love them and then the love is gone. Like, and it's bye, done, sorry, loved you, but
I think it's like what you said even at the top of this episode is like so many times because we're so engrossed in these stories and these relationships and how they evolve that we think that's a normal relationship.
And it's not.
And we expect that from our partner and it's unfair.
Yeah.
Or we go into unhealthy relationships because this mold of what a relationship looks like that we've seen, whether it's with people that are in our lives that are in unhealthy relationships or it's people on the screen, like that can evolve into people accepting things or searching out that excitement and like that feeling. And then if things are good, they don't feel like that. So you think like, well, this is boring or this isn't the right relationship for me. I'm supposed to feel this when in all reality,
I'm supposed to pull my hair out.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be scared he's going to leave consistently. If he cheats, like I'm supposed to be that girl that's like, oh, we'll overcome this together. Like, no,
not always. Not always.
But
yeah, it's true. I think I'm so glad you rounded out that point because I feel like I even have conversations with my girlfriends all the time, and not just women, you know, all friends, but specifically a lot of women where I, you know, will be like, oh my God, your relationship looks amazing or something like that. And they're like, well, thank you, it is, but trust me, we're not perfect. And it's like all of us have that like tagline of like, trust me, we're not perfect. And I think social media does that a lot of the time where you see these relationships and I think people get the wrong idea that they have this like whirlwind perfect romance that nothing happens. And I think that is another version of us comparing ourselves, comparing our relationships. Like, I think it's easy. It's an easy trap to fall into. And I remember talking to a good friend the other day who's in a relationship and I said something like, I was like, you guys are so solid. You know, like I was talking about her and her partner. And she was like, thanks. Yeah, no, I feel so. But she was like, do your other friends feel like this? And I was like, absolutely. Like, she was like asking if my other friends go through like fights with their partners. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Of course they do. We all do, you know?
It's part of growth.
It is.
It really is what draws in that relationship actually to be closer. But it's like, I think that's what the problem is too. You don't see a lot of that even in movies. Like I think I used to think that you would fight and you just walk away because that's what you see in movies. And he's like, wait. And then she just walks away and then they're like, oh, I guess we're like, there was no like actual like conflict resolution. You don't really see that a lot.
Totally.
And I think that can lead to, if there's a fight, you thinking that's the demise of a relationship or that like this is so wrong or this is so bad. Instead of thinking of it as growth, how do we overcome it?
Yeah. So true. Because I think hot take before, not hot take, me saying it before. But I had a relationship for a long time that had very little discourse. We were just two peas in a pod. Smooth sailing. Like we really like, sure, there was small hiccups. We never fought. Like we genuinely never fought. And I used to wear that as like a badge of honor. I used to be like, we're unshakable. You know, like I was like, are you kidding me? We would never fight. We don't fight. We don't fight, you know? And no regrets about that relationship by any means, but I will say in relationships that I've endured since then, anytime I've had some kind of discourse with a partner, I feel like it's only made me get closer to them. And it's another form of communicating where we're able to, like, I think maybe before I would swallow things and I didn't think I was. Like, it was more like the harmony was more important to me. Sure, yeah. And I think now at the ripe age of 28, turning 29, I'm like, I would rather have the discourse and like, I'm not scared. I'm scared of losing people that I love, obviously. Of course, but it's like not at the expense of my peace. Yep. So it's like.
Or truth. Like,
I'm not going to swallow what my opinion is because that will just make it harmonious. Like, I think that we can, you hear, or you would see in media, like, these big blowouts and then they leave and then it's like, oh, maybe they get back together, maybe they don't. That ruined the relationship. And you kind of see that and you go like, how can they recover, you know? And it's like, you just do, you know? You like, if you are meant to, you do. You guys have you both come with critical thinking and problem solving and you know that it's you two against the issue and you try and solve it to the best of your ability and you go from there. And if you need professional help,
get professional help.
You know, and I think it's funny how we can idealize. And I think we are spoon fed this, you know, with Disney, even like we're kids and we're watching, like, I was feral for Prince Eric. Why? No other reason than I thought I was a mermaid. I wanted to be the Little Mermaid. Obviously, I was like, I'm like, when you think of this fucking love story, her voice is taken. Her one thing, her feel like, you know. And
a woman can't speak and a man falls in love with her.
And he's like, we have so much in common. And you're like, what? And again, no regrets. Love them. We'll watch that any day. But I'm like, it's not the love story that we think it is. And when we're kids, we're watching it and we're like, the beautiful princess got with the beautiful prince and now they're perfect.
Live happily ever after.
Yeah, and they're never going to have conflict ever.
Yeah. As long as she doesn't have a voice in the relationship.
Yeah, exactly, you know? Or as long as she gives up her royalty or as long as she gives up her, you know, hobbies or whatever, you know? It's like, let's go down the line of all the Disney things. And you're just like, wow, you know? She cuts off all her hair and loses her ability to regenerate, you know, like Rapunzel. You're like, okay. But yeah, and a lot of those are still the trope of like some kind of different class, you know, opposing of being like
of a woman
come
being
to my
saved
world.
By a man.
Yeah, it's just interesting that it's all around us, and I think it influences us more than we think it does.
Absolutely does, and more than we could ever understand because it's so embedded in our childhood and our day-to-day lives and the people around us. And so when you're constantly reaffirmed of like what the relationship should be, or if you get in a fight, people being like, "Oh my gosh, you should leave," instead of being like, "Well, how do you fix this?" Like,
and it's so easy to give another opinion, right? And you're like, you know, especially when you're protective of your people. Like I notice myself fucking like bristling at sometimes with my friends where, you know.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, when you think about Carrie and Big, when you're like, would you have told her to leave? And I'm like, get the fuck up, get up and leave. Like, I'll pack your bags, you know? But you're right. Sometimes when you're in the relationship, it's not always the answer. Always.
And well, that's the line. And we've talked about this so much, like about the really bad relationships. Like, there's a point where you have to be.
You should step in if you can.
Yeah.
At least let your friend know that you're there for them.
Exactly.
But I will say, sometimes, you know, you'll be protective of your friend, and you're like, you don't deserve this kind of treatment. What do you mean? And then you kind of put yourself in their shoes, or you substitute it for something you've experienced with your loved one, and you're like. Yeah, like maybe that was a shortcoming of them, or like maybe that didn't play out exactly how I wanted it to, but like they're
worth more than that.
Yeah,
they're worth more than one event.
And it's like, oh my God, I can't express to you all of the little moments that.
Well, that's what's so hard. Like that's why it's like I say you can't understand a relationship unless you're in it, because. I'm not going to tell you about the million things that Neil's done that are small things that like add up to me feeling loved. I couldn't even verbalize it. Even if I'm telling a story, it's like I'm not going to remember every moment or a look or a feel or a touch like that amounts to a relationship and why you're committed to somebody.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if anything, this conversation has shown is like, I think we ingest this media, whether it be actual like realistic like social media or it's TV and film, rom-coms, all of that, right? Shows that like are the pinnacle of like or pinnacle, of the healthy relationship. And I think it's like you got to figure out what's healthy for you, you know? And I think defining that, and I think obviously outsource as much as you want to. And like, I like watching a rom-com because it makes me feel good. But I want to
cry. I watch reels all the time and I'm crying for strangers all the time.
I'm like,
I know.
But you have to discern that that's not, even on social media, which it seems realistic, it's not. You know, like I think I sent you, or I showed you the other day, one of the most beautiful proposals I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. They must. And then your brain goes, they must have the perfect relationship. He probably loves her so much. He goes down on her every night. You're like, he pays for everything, you know. And I'm not even saying those are things that I'm like, oh, those are my checklists. But you think like, oh, he's the perfect partner. She's the perfect partner. She fucking cooks for him. She does this. She also like, you know, egregious. I was going to say some inappropriate things, but you know, you think of these like idealized versions of like they are the perfect partners for each other and they have the perfect relationship. Ergo, they had this perfect, beautiful beach proposal and they're going to live their perfect ass lives. And what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Well, and that's like the judging of ourselves, right? And I think social media is like our new media. And so people are like, of course, like even for ourselves, like I'm not putting anything out there where it's like,
you and Neil fighting.
Or like even like we go to the gym every day and he'll post something and like I'll generally like repost it, and like there was one I didn't like. I was like, he's like, why didn't you repost the video from yesterday? I was like, no,
I didn't like how I looked.
I was literally, it was like leg day and I'm like soaking wet and I'm wearing a gray tank top, so it's like it really shows the sweat. No,
and your man didn't think.
No, he's like, no, but look how strong you look. I'm like, no.
And sometimes I feel like that is also the thing that I think about so constantly is like when you're dating, you're trying to attract a partner, whether that be heterosexual or not, you know, you're fucking bells and whistles, perfume. I'm scrubbing every fucking inch of my body, you know, and I'm like nails, fucking dress, push-up bra, like, you know, like everything that you can do. And then like without a fail, every fucking time I have my glasses on, my hair is up, I'm in a fucking like big t-shirt giving Adam Sandler vibes. They're like, you've never been more beautiful. I'm like, Jesus Christ, you know? And it's true. I like think we see on media like these models, these influencers, and we're like, oh my God, they're so stunning. And like my boyfriend would want that more than me because she look at her, she's a 24-inch waist, and you know, and at least that's where you see my insecurities coming through. That's the thing that I go to. And then it's like at the end of the day, because I think about it and I'm like, when I'm with a partner and I'm so into them, like I'm like, I can't express the amount of blinders. I'm like, other men don't exist. No. Like they're a talking head. I'm like, I don't like, I'm not dead. I'm not like that person's, you know, I can say like that person's objectively attractive, but
there's no connection.
There's no fire in the loins. No. Like there's not anything, you know? I'm like, I couldn't be me. Like, and it's because I'm so encompassed in who they
dedicated,
are. And like, I feel like I probably even do that where I have the moments where like, you look so strong. And they're like, are you fucking serious? You know? It's just funny that we perceive ourselves and others so inherently differently than we think we do.
Yeah, it's so true. I wish like one day, like you got one day a year just to step outside of yourself and see like what others see.
Yeah, low key, I like the what women want. That is so tempting. Yeah, like I think it would be. You can't be egregious with it. Like I think you would need one day where you could hear all of the nice things people think about you, and then you're like, oh, I can go back to living. But I
know. I was thinking about that the other day because there's this one woman that's at the gym. I've never talked to her, but you can tell, like, we see her there every day, and you could tell she's just trying so hard to get into shape, and every day we're like, there's our friend, I'm so proud of her. Aww. And she has no idea that we're, like, seeing her and feeling this, and I don't know, like, I don't know if it'd be weird. Maybe one day I'll go up to her, but like she has no idea that two people see her there every day putting in the work, and we're saying to her and to each other, like, we're so proud of her. Yeah.
No, I think you absolutely should. I'm all for. I compliment everyone. Yeah. Though. You know, we go in public and I'm like, I love your dress because it's that is the moments that I feel like I'm levitating. Like if someone compliments how I'm smelling, or you know, or how I low. Or something like that, I'm like, I will end it all. Thank you so much. That is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And I think when we hear those thoughts, and I think to relate it to what we're discussing, like I think if you tell I told my friend, right? I was like, you guys have such a beautiful relationship. And I've said that to you and Neil. You know, I'm like, when you see these things that you're not going like, I know that they're insecure about it, so I'm going to compliment it. But you're maybe it's not
acknowledging it. What most people maybe wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I think having those moments where you go like, hey, like it's really, I said it actually the other day with, to my mom. I had a moment with my brother and my sister-in-law. And, I got weirdly emotional over this. They were so sweet. He was having a really bad day. My brother was in a shit mood. I'm going to be fucking for real with him. And his wife was so kind and compassionate and so just like happy-go-lucky, like letting it roll. Like, and he wasn't mad at her. Like he was just, it's, when someone's mad and you're like, let's all be on our best behavior. And she was straight up like, she just knows how to handle Max. Like she was just like, she understands. And she just kind of was like, whatever. And they had this sweet rapport where I was sitting at the dinner table with them and they're going back and forth and she starts making him laugh. And you can automatically see the like stress start melting off his shoulders. And I said it to my mom. I was like, that's one of the most, I felt like a fly on the wall. I felt so privileged, to witness that because I was like, that was a real relationship and a real relationship moment. Someone was mad, it was like everything was going wrong. Like we made shitty pasta and like we forgot something at the store, so we had to make that shitty pasta and then he was hungry and it was like all these things. And that's reality. That's the thing that we witness.
Don't often see.
And I was like, I was like, I've always felt really confident in the relationship, but I was like, that was one of the most real moments where I was like, oh, if a couple's gonna last, they're gonna last. And I think I should probably tell them that. I told my mom, but I feel like I should tell them that. And I was like, that was such a cool moment for me where I was like, whoa, there was discourse. The energy was a little fucked. I was here like, should I leave? And they got through it like so like triumphantly. And again, it wasn't like are we good? Like, it wasn't even spoken about. They just
smooth, like, Oh, I love that.
And I was like, that's the kind, like, we should be looking up to those kinds of relationships.
Absolutely. Let's put them on screen.
Right. Do you guys want to come on the pod?
Yeah, seriously. But to wrap us up here, I think what we're trying to say is we so often look to media to tell us what to feel, what to think, what to pursue. And in a relationship status, like there's so much that's done in movies and television just to keep your interest or to pull emotion from you in a quick way. That doesn't necessarily mean what you need to be searching out. Like look to other people in your life that have a great relationship that you can admire, and also just remember that nobody knows your relationship like you do, and seek out what makes you happy and healthy. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Femme to All. We'll see you next week. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. Thank you.
Woo, thank you.